Hello, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, good night, wherever you are. And thank you for joining us on today's awesome episode of Demo Days from GitHub Enterprise. Totally excited to be here with you while you give up some of your time with me on Friday. Today's theme, browser camera action. We're going to be doing some exciting stuff with actions, believe it or not, right from in the browser, using a sneak peek at GitHub's cloud development environment, Codespaces. Before we go any further, I'm just going to introduce some folks that are helping me out today, manning the chat channel, which I am also looking at on the side here, is my colleague and friend, Andrew McCoy, also known affectionately as Moose. So if you hear me shout Moose, that's not anything to be scared of. He's just in the background helping us out. We also have the privilege to have with us Matthew Isabel, who is the product manager for Codespaces. So again, super exciting things to share with you today. Looking forward to being able to dig into Codespaces and do a little bit more with actions. If you've been watching the series, you'll have seen some of my friends and colleagues, again, from the team in solutions engineering, demonstrate the capabilities of actions with regards to CI/CD, and also with plugging into GitHub Advanced Security. So very, very cool. What we haven't been able to show you right now, or up until yet, is actually how we create actions, how we might write actions, and how we might use them to interact not just with the development pipelines, but also with other parts of GitHub, issues, projects, PRs, and those kind of things. Now, it's going to be a little bit of fun. This is a new medium for me. Usually Twitch involves, a controller that has two sticks, not all of this keyboard stuff for me. But I am cool for us to do a code along today with a little bit of backseat coding if that's what folks want to do. So we have set up for you folks a repository which you can generate a template or use to generate a repo from a template, and you can code along with that. Before we dive straight into stuff, I want to humanize this a little bit and share perhaps a little bit about myself and give you some indication of what I'm about. So I'm going to share my screen here. And you can actually check this out on github.com too, /i-marsh. We have a new README capability, which, hang on. We have a new README capability, which is plugging in your own repo. So username /username is the repo, and it plugs whatever you put into that pretty much straight into your profile page. So just want to get a quick thumbs up from Moose and folks. You all see my share okay before we do go get any further?
Good to go on my end.
Excellent, fantastic, thank you. All right, so hang on a second, that was not supposed to happen. There you go, a little glitch, just a PNG, right? So it's been a struggle for a lot of people, I think, has been locked in home and unable to get out. And I was able to get out a little while ago, somewhere local, and I just wanted a picture to kind of inspire some of us to think a little bit more about being outside the office. And this is what came to mind as I was searching for things to kind of share a little story with you. So we managed to get out onto a local river, just massively picturesque, making you glad to be alive, really. I was out there with my wife, who you can see in this picture here, and we're just paddling. It's about 2 miles, just having a bunch of fun out in the river. And you can see it's such a beautiful day, and I just so grateful that we have this opportunity to be, out and about and taking advantage of the things that are nearby. This is what it's really been like, right? I don't just have Zoom fatigue. I have butt fatigue. I have chair fatigue. It's like everything work related is pretty fatigued. And this bad boy needs to be changed out for sure. So my plan is to swap this chair out, given all the new capabilities that GitHub's providing me with when I'm working remotely here. I'm going to swap this chair out for this chair here. I think that's aspirational coding from Paul is where I want to be. Also, we had some life events just want to share, and I think it's been difficult, particularly for any of you out there with seniors or younger children in education. It's been difficult. We're gonna need to change the way that we interoperate, not only at work but also at school. And so I've been trying to get my kids into coding and GitHub and helping them with their remote shares and working online. I think that's going to be super important moving forwards. So again, just some fun picks from the fam. This is where I really wanted to get to, and I'd love to see in the chat if anybody recognizes what this is. And I can't actually see the chat right now. All right, Moose, you're gonna have to feed me the chat. I can't see it on my screen.
No worries. Nothing yet. Let's see.
It's going back a ways. It's going back a ways.
No, Mr. FH Casper, it is not Bad Dude's Menu.
So this is a screenshot from an old game on the BBC Model B 32K, which is where I started actually writing code, nearly 36 years ago, as it was. This is a game called Elite, and it actually got a revamp. It is revamped for most major consoles, including Xbox and PlayStation 4, as Elite Dangerous. And the reason I wanted to bring this was because it's a really great parallel to, what we started with out in the day, what we managed with, and the state of technology 20 years ago, pre-internet, pre-GitHub, and the things that we did back then, and how these things have moved on and become much fuller experiences, much richer, and more engaging. Talking of coding experiences, this is what I actually started coding with. This is an ICL coding template for document design language. You actually use it, believe it or not, with a pencil. So this is what you would use your coding pencil with, is that phrase. I was given this by a family friend 35 years ago, and I've kept it as a memento of my journey since. And that really ties in some small way to, I think, GitHub's journey and the massive, massive movement that we've had just in the last few years for enterprise in terms of the wealth of features that we've been bringing to the table, the things that we've done in security, and the way that that's been received by a great community out there. So we're going to use some of that fantastic technology, and hopefully I'm going to be able to show you in some detail a sneak preview today of Codespaces. Again, privileged to have Matthew Isabel on the chat to answer your questions about Codespaces, the cloud development environment, and all things related to that. Moose, can you take the URI here for folks and just drop that in the chat? Thank you. You can code along with me on this repository. I'm going to use Codespaces because I have access to it. But you are most likely going to use VS Code or some other tool of your choice to work in your repository. I've built this as a template, so you should, and we can walk through it in a second. You should be able to click on use this template, and it'll provision out a repo for you to work in. Obviously, then clone that and work it in your own editor. I'm assuming that the folks on this call that want to participate on the stream, have some basic knowledge of Git, or understand actions and how to commit and do things like that. If not, there's some starter material in that link. We can go right to the bottom. Right. Apologies for the scroll on the screen share. There's a bit to get through. And you can see there's information, docs, tutorials, and lots of stuff. So if I do a really horrible job today and you don't get on with it at all, you can go speak to a robot at labs.github.com and interact and learn about actions and things from there. Otherwise, there's lots of great information about some of the dot files for Codespaces, for example, the official tutorial for setting up a JavaScript action, which is what we're going to do today from GitHub. And like I say, that's where all the information is really for getting started. If you're going to code along, this is going to be where we stay. We're going to create an action that does a number of things, right? Oftentimes when people create actions, or we're looking at actions and workflow integration, there are a number of things that we want to be able to do. First of all, we might honestly want to be able to upload some build artifacts to a location that we can get to in the repo. So that's a thing we're going to do. Secondly, I think a lot of folks will want to be able to commit back into the repository. So when we're taking some information and working with it inside of our action, we want to be able to put that back into the repo that we're working with. That's a pretty common request. So I'm going to have a look at that. It's not technically going to be done in the action. It's going to be done in the workflow, but I thought it worth sharing anyway. Finally, we're going to kind of look at the interaction with GitHub through the API. And that is actually done through the REST-based API documentation, obviously, at the end there, if you want to. So we're going to build an action using JavaScript Node. I'm going to do it in Codespaces and show off some of that stuff. And hopefully you will be able to follow along as we go. There's a quick link here for code along resources. So if you don't have NPM, a node installed, you can head along and do that right now, along with VS Code and some other things. So click ahead and go. I am going to switch angles and we will get straight to it. Moose, please let me know if any questions come up, because like I say, for some reason, I cannot see the chat.
I shall. I'm keeping myself on mute if I stop pulling the camera off of you, okay. But I will jump off and ask questions as needed.
Fabulous. Okay, so I'm going to go show you, I guess, what the end result is going to look like, so you know what we're aiming at. In fact, you know what? Let's not do that. Let's go straight in and create a new template. So by clicking on this new template button, you'll see I'm given the opportunity here to create a new repo. dd run live. That's scary in its own right. So live run with Codespaces. And I'm going to make that private for now and create the repository. Okay, so this is just regular template functionality. It's going to take my demo days prepped one and go ahead and generate that for me. So you're basically going to have a copy of the instructions as we need to code along with. In here, for each step, I've included some snippets. You can basically just grab these, copy and paste them into the appropriate file for the most part. And I'm going to talk you through what they're doing and why they're doing it, so we know exactly what's going on, and it's not just a copy pasta exercise for us today. All right. So again, this is probably one of the really, really cool bits. You'll see here that there is, in fact, a dev container or .dev container folder in my root. This is a secret little gem that allows me to configure a one-click cloud development environment, also known as Codespaces. In here, there are scripts. There's a Docker file description that basically describes the underlying Docker container that's used to build my Visual Code Codespaces environment. It gives me the opportunity to manipulate my all of my dot files, a bunch of preferences, and you can see here I've added some extensions in for working with Markdown, for pre-printing, for linting, and integrating and interacting with GitHub Actions. So a lot of fun here. What this means is that anybody clicking on the code button and launching a code space will be provisioned with that environment. And the reason that is so powerful is because, you know, like most folks, you will have been to projects before, and you will have been faced with a README that is not dissimilar to this. Maybe you have some of your own internal projects whereby there's a really huge README, and that's not even the exercise. That's not even the challenge of what you're trying to do. That's actually more related to setting up your machine, building the environment so you can actually contribute and participate. So there's a huge amount of time that is taken by our community, developers and contributors, just to stand things up in a consistent and reliable way. And that often comes at the price of having to sacrifice some of the settings and things that you have, conflicts of package versions on your own laptop or your development environment. It's super difficult to standardize. I think everybody at some point on the chat must definitely have used the works on my laptop phrase or emoji. We're so used to that, you know, differences, subtle differences between environments, and this just destroys that straight away. So like any container, that's going to take a minute to build. So if you completely shut down your laptop or fire that up again, it's going to take a little while to boot it up. You can see it building in the background here. And whilst it's doing that, I should be able to show you what the result is of our build. So like I say, we're going to have some fun with this today and build an interaction with an issue. You'll see I have workflow, just the one main file. All right, it's not particularly sophisticated. It's just going to reference a single action in the root of our repository because we're building an action. And it's going to have a single index.js file, right, which does some pretty straightforward stuff that I'll talk you through as we code along. Ultimately, we're going to interact with issues. We're going to upload some artifacts. And if I go ahead and in this repo, give you a click on the repo, click a new issue. All right. So in the background now, our issue has been triggered by an issue event. You know, remember, if you remember from the previous demo day sessions, if you saw any of those, Kevin will have shown you the triggers that cause workflows to run. We're looking specifically at ones related to issues and pushing right now. And you'll see that this has fired off our workflow and given us back a little hot lifting dad joke to get us rolling on the day. Again, not hugely practical. That's not the point of today. But what it's showing is the ability for us to interact with programmatically in a bot-driven fashion with the workflow element of GitHub. So stretch this a little bit further. Hopefully you can think about the idea of messaging folks based on label changes. Maybe integrating something that provides more direct feedback about the state of an issue when it's in triage. There's any number of workflow things that you can now open up to your community because you're able to interact with them in an automated way through issues. So this is super, super powerful and just one example of the kind of things you can do. Okay.
So Ian, excuse me, had a couple questions going on. I had asked folks how long it takes to set up an environment, had an answer about a day. And then about the engine it's built on. Was it built, Codespaces built on using Monaco? The same one that uses VS Code, and Matthew was able to just answer that one for folks. It is, but it's also taking that to another level as you're going to go further and show. You can run, debug, build, test, interact with extensions. Did you highlight the extensions piece? I might have missed that.
Did I what? Sorry.
Highlight extensions.
I'm going to go drop into that roundabout right now.
Awesome. And then probably a lot of folks looking to answer this one. I don't think Ian or I have the permission on this one, but Matthew, have some folks wondering about what the beta list is looking like these days.
Oh, okay. Well, I can speak to that briefly in terms of, I can tell folks, let me just switch this around a little bit. I can tell folks that at the bottom of the page, we have the sign up link for the beta. Matthew can elaborate on how we're working through that right now. I've been told a launch date of October 19th for Enterprise, but that again may be speculative. So Matthew, please, yeah, absolutely keep us honest and correct on that in the chat. Okay, so you can see on my screen that my Codespace has fired up, and you can already see the ESLint extension is asking me if I want to allow it to operate on my code, and I absolutely do. That's great. That's just one of the extensions that you saw in that dev containers JSON file that I've pre-populated into this space. So rather than having to go in and manually add my extensions or bring in personal extensions through syncing, I've actually got these extensions installed by the virtue of the dev container specifications in the repository. So again, that helps you in your project create a very controlled, very consistent environment that doesn't take any kind of setup. And from where we are right now, you can be doing this on a Surface, on an iPad, on anything with enough screen real estate that can connect to a browser. It's probably going to work fantastically. All right. So if I go And just open up our instructions as well. Then we can get crack-a-lackin'. Okay, so step one, just do a simple workflow. We can do that in Codespaces, or we could do that directly in the UI. If I go to the UI real quick, let me just go to my repo. Just lost it. Hang on a second. I'm going to find the right repo for us. There we go. For some reason I lost a tab in my browser. No problem. Okay, so we'll have a look at doing this two ways. So inside of the UI, when you click on Actions for the first time, you will be presented with this interface. So this is super helpful if you're creating an action for an existing project and you have an idea of the kind of technology you're going to use. And there's a ton of templates here that have been built out by the community, some of them by Microsoft, some have been contributed by other organizations, you know, Terraform, there's some from IBM, Google. So there's a bunch of stuff here that has been laid down as best practices and is supported by organizations that you can reuse. This also supports for the enterprise template-based, so you can share them within your organization and your own best practices and have those for starter workflows. What we're going to do is to set up a manual workflow. That's going to add a dispatch event. That'll create our YAML file. We're going to switch that out to main.yml, and we're going to copy in our snippet from sample one. Okay, and all this is a very simple file that's going to kick off our hello world. And you'll notice that this is filtering here on a series of events. So a couple of things to point out in this interface, and we'll see it also in Codespaces in a second, is there is some support here for the different types of events. You can see we've got IntelliSense that helps inform you as to what the different things are that we can look at. And on the right-hand side, you'll see marketplace actions that we can search for. So that's that wonderful community of actions that we've got out there already, plus documentation. So if you are, like me, occasionally a little bit spare and you need a reminder, there's some helpful tips and tricks on the right-hand side to show you how to do different things inside of your workflow. So from here, we can actually create a commit. And in this case, we're listening for pushes on our test branch. So I'm going to make sure that our branch is named test something or other. So initial workflow, and I'm going to commit that to a new branch, live test. I don't know if that kills it. 1, and we will propose a new file. Okay, and I'm going to create a pull request. And I'm going to go ahead and merge it. All right, so at this point, we have demo days action JavaScript is in place. It hasn't been triggered yet because it's only just been uploaded. But as we work through, I'm hoping we'll see as we commit again onto that test branch, it'll trigger our workflow. And we'll see something show up here for us to work with. Okay. So back in our code space, you can see, it's pretty difficult to see, right at the bottom here, little tiny, you'll see I can sync my branch and my Visual Studio Code Codespaces window with what's actually on github.com. So now you see that I brought down some of the stuff that we've had. And we've got the images, and we've got the file, we've got the README that we're looking at here, and we also have our main.yaml. So here's our workflow. All right. And we can see that we actually have integrated with that an extension. Let me show you the extensions piece. So I have all of these extensions included, including the YAML parser for GitHub Actions. So this will help us stay tight on what we're doing in here. This one, again, is just going to echo hello world. And I can save that. And now you can see, again, with our GitHub installed extension, I have changes to a file. I'm on the main branch. I probably want to switch to the test branch. So when I commit this, you choose live test 1. Oh, yeah, let's stage those and commit. And now we can push that up. So this should give us a push from our browser-based cloud development environment directly into GitHub. And you knew there'd be the cursor for demo somewhere at some point. I'm expecting to see something in here. Moose, we got any Twitch along coders that are giving me a heads up on what I'm missing?
We have not yet, and I think we do need to give that disclaimer again. Yeah, please help keep us honest here. Ian
yeah,
and
if you see me doing something ridiculous, that goes for you too, Matthew. All right, so let's look at my main YAML. We can do that in here, and we can do it in Codespaces. I feel like this is good. This is a user, oh, this is definitely user error 123. There we go. That's
Now, while you're doing this, quick question for you, Ian. Are you using any of those new composite steps that we released this week or no?
I am not. This is all super basic stuff. So
it's just the basic stuff. So it could even get cooler.
Well, quite possibly, quite possibly. I'm just going to change this to be test, and we will create a new branch called test, I think, and see if that's going to help me. I definitely tried this out earlier and it was working just fine. Okay. You know, a 45-minute long live demo was always going to be risky. We knew that was going to be the case. Changes, add my changes. Come on, Ian, focus what you're doing. Alrighty, so we can see that we're going to create that new branch called test, push that up. And that's that one. There we go. Huzzah. That's what we wanted to see. So I'm not sure, maybe my branch matching regex was off there. We actually have our first workflow running. Fantastic, good. So let's hope that's the last glitch we get. As you can see, it picks up the name and the title. That's the job name that we saw defined in the YAML definition. And we have a script that is run on this container. So this container is also specified as part of the runner. We're using Ubuntu. And you know, all of the tools that you might expect for a standard build are included on that image. We're going to extend that now as we push into building a JavaScript action to extend the functionality with a language that we're familiar with, right? JavaScript and Node, super common, super popular, and very easy to get the hang of for integrating with actions. So step one, pleased to say we have that checked off. And we'll get a little bit more complicated as we go down. Let's kill this one out of the way. Okay. So we're going to leave that there and scroll down a little bit here. So step 2, we're going to introduce the action.yaml file, and that's going to define our action that we're building. The workflow itself is just going to act as a place for us to drive that action and test it out. We could have used an external repository, another repository to bring it in and drive it as a test, but this is clearly the simplest and easiest way to do it in one place. We're also going to install some packages, Actions Core and Actions GitHub, which give us access to the API and some core information about what's happening inside of the action with regards to the interactions with GitHub. And obviously, we're going to use some NPM pieces here to install the packages that we need to run the JavaScript. Again, we'll start with something simple with Hello World and just make sure we get going before we try and do anything with issues or anything more complicated. So here's a really cool thing that helps us explore some more pieces of Codespaces. Again, it's not just a web-based IDE. This is far more sophisticated than that. You've already seen some of the functions of the extensibility. We also have our own environment for running terminal. And I'm going to make this a little bit bigger. I think that's probably a good idea. So you can see it. Let me just, okay. So I actually set up a Z shell terminal that gives me a little more room to work with for this demo. And so I'm going to do that. And you can see that I've also got some nice colorization on there as well through some nice dot files hacks. So we're running on our test branch right now. And I'm going to stay there for the time being because it worked really nicely. And I will now put in my commands. So I'm going to initialize this repository as a node project. I'm going to accept the defaults. Obviously, there's going to be some bits and pieces missing from that, but for demo purposes, we're not too concerned. So that's step 1. And then I'm going to head and manually install these 2 pieces because they require me to do so if I want to interact as part of an actions flow. So install, my bad. We've got a show of hands, Moose, on the chat there as to anybody that's actually coding along. They might actually be further along than me at this point.
I do.
Again, it's Friday afternoon for a lot of us here on the East Coast, so folks maybe just chilling, kick it back.
Folks are might be sitting back having a beer,
just watching the train wreck. Okay, that's good, excellent.
Yeah, I wish I grabbed one myself.
All right, install add actions /GitHub. All right, and so one of the things that we can see here is now we've brought in a whole bunch of node modules. You don't have to build it this way. I'm going to build it this way because I'm being lazy, but you can actually build a dist, wrap up all those modules and just push the one file into the repository. For ease and convenience, I'm just going to add this whole bundle along with my package lock and package lock JSON up into GitHub, and then the action will have all of the node modules that it needs to be able to run. So let me go ahead and do that. Just do a quick look at how things see. So here we've got the power of light. If you're a command line Git fan, then you can go for it here. You don't have to use the UI. Obviously we've got so many different ways of interacting with GitHub. You've got the desktop, you've got Git CLI, newly released, you've got Git bash. There's a whole ton of ways. This is probably my favorite. So I can see I've got these files and I'm going to add them all, and I'm going to commit. And I'm going to say add all node modules. All right, and then I am probably going to do a git push to test. And that's going to put all of my working node stuff into test. We haven't actually done anything to build an action or run an action yet. So we've just got ourselves ready and in a place. We don't even have an index.js. So let's look at what it actually takes to get ourselves into a place where we can do an action. Okay. We're going to need a simple index file. No criticism on the code, please. I'm not a node developer. I tried to keep it reasonably simple and straightforward and easy to follow, but I am definitely not the world's greatest coder. So I am going to go to my files and I am going to add a new one. Not under there though. Just there. All right. Copy, paste, and save it. Okay. So again, very simply put, this is going to do a console log of, I don't know if we have a participant on there that's interested in being named and shown up on Twitch. I'm going to put me on there for now. It's also going to write out for us the GitHub context. So the GitHub context in the JavaScript world, in the action, is going to describe for us everything that we can see about the event and the person that invoked or caused the event that kicked off the workflow. We're going to see that inside of the log files for the workflow. That's helpful because it gives us an indication of the kind of information real time that we can use to interact with the different pieces and parts of GitHub, pulling out the user, pulling out the repository, looking at followers, stars. You know, we have all of that ability when we look at that context and contextual information. One of the other things we're going to need to do in addition to that is modify our workflow file. We're going to need to modify it to say, hey, we actually now want you to use an action, the action that we're building. So let's go to workflow main.yaml and paste the change in here. And you'll see I'm actually doing a couple of things here. I'm going to use a publicly available action. Okay? And again, documentation is at the bottom of the repo that checks out my repository code. We're going to use that a little bit later on. And then the next one, the next step in this hello world job is to invoke a JavaScript action, which is currently hosted in our repo root. Okay? We can specify different locations, and there are rules about where you can run actions from in a repository. For today's exercise and for what we're doing, just going to run it locally so we can see it in action. So we can save that one too. And then we also need a YAML descriptor for our action. So this is the metadata file. You know, most people are familiar with this kind of thing. That describes the action and tells the workflow engine how to interpret it and how to interact with it. So we're going to add another file. And it's going to be called action.yml. And we're going to paste it in. Oh, no, we're not. We're going to paste that in. We want to grab the file that we need. You know it's a complicated Friday when copy and paste isn't actually working for you, right? Any helpful Command C, Command V tips from the chat? Huh? All right, this is better. So again, we've got some help inside of Visual Studio Code online remote or Codespaces as we know it, in terms of YAML, auto completion, right? So we can actually see what's going on and provide the metadata file. Here we're just saying that we want to run using the Node 12 environment and that the entry point or the main file that's going to be running our action is index.js. Okay? So it's just a descriptor that says where everything's going to start and run. Okay, so quick sense check. We have our workflow with main, and I'm going to have to move these files out of here because I put them in the wrong place. There we go. See, drag and drop out into the root of the branch. Fantastic. Leaving my main under workflows, which is where it belongs. So our main workflow here that is going to use our JavaScript action in the root of the repository, which is where we will find our action.yaml, which describes where to go to start, and that we're running on Node 12. So Node 12 for index.js, which will bring us to here. And this will then just run some console logs on the context for what's being executed in our repository. Okay, so we will use the UI this time, I think, to push out changes. So all my changes can be added and staged, and then I can commit, add first JS action. Okay, and then we make another small sacrifice Let's just make sure we didn't mess up our workflow file before we do that. I want to say I did some copy paste to star. Okay, it should still work as long as my regex is right. We're going to push the test branch again. And while that's happening, I'm going to kick something else off in here to showcase another feature of Codespaces. And I'm not sure Matthew's going to like what I'm doing, but we'll see. If I go back here,
the phone a friend.
No, not yet. We're going to phone a friend just before we finish. Yeah, I'm keeping an eye on the time. It's a bit of a slow start, but hopefully we're picking up the pace now and people are enjoying it. I wish I did see the chat. It might inspire me a little bit. Okay, so npx moves. We keep create React app test app. Let's see what happens there. All right, I'm going to kick that off and we're going to go and look at what happened in our repo because that's going to take a couple of minutes to install and build and create a new template React app. There's method in my madness. You'll see in a little minute. So if we now go over to our repository and we look at actions again. Oh, this is the wrong one. This is the wrong one. Let's do this. This handy little link here. Do I want to do that? No, I don't want to do that. Let me do this one. It's right here. Lost my browser tabs. Okay. Live.
Are you sure that's the right one, Ian?
I don't know. I'm testing you.
Yeah, no, I'm paying attention. I'm not multitasking at all.
I'm just having a time of it. Look, it's right here. DD run live is what it's called. Just having a hard time of actually typing. It's here. There we go. Refresh our actions. My word, to pronounce myself. So we added our first JS action. We can see that that has kicked off. And now we can start to look at what's coming out in the log. So our JavaScript action is executed. And you can see that we now have a payload that's been written out to the log file. These log files, by the way, are live. You should have seen that if you've watched one of the other previous demo days. So these are live trailing logs. You can see them and download them and increase the detail, verbosity as you see fit. There's a whole bunch of information in here that's, honestly, most of it is kind of wood for the trees. But what we can see quite clearly, and I'll stop scrolling in a second, promise, is we have a payload. And we also have the commits that are related to this push. We have the committer, right? And we also have some information right down at the bottom here about the workflow. It was created with an event called push, and we have the char as well as details about the workflow itself. Okay, so this is going to be handy for us interacting with issues and other parts of the GitHub platform as we go forwards. Fantastic. So I'm super happy that worked. Maybe I want to upload that as an artifact though, so I can download it and share it or archive it for posterity. So we'll do that next. Before we do that, we can see that our NPM project that little side project here that we're doing has kicked off. So let's see into our test app and do an NPM start. And this should, as you might expect if you're working on your local machine, start your development survey. And the whole point of doing that would be so that you could make changes in the code, get live reload, see what's happening before you actually commit the code. And this is where we get some significant differentiation from a web-based IDE or a text editor, because this now gives us the ability to do some really awesome things. You can see this link here to localhost. Obviously, we're not on localhost. We're in a remote code space. But now I'm going to click on this link, and what we should see is connection to a forwarded port that allows us to actually go see the code that is running in our code space from a browser on our local machine, which again is another kind of mind-blowing, game-changing capability, right? So we see the React spinning logo, so you know that server is up and running. That's just, to me, that's the fact that I can do this from anywhere on pretty much any platform just through the browser is game changing. I'm super excited. All right, back to the main plot. Let me stop that server and we will go back to business in our workspace, because what I want to do now is use the GitHub artifact API to upload that JSON that we got and put that up in a zip file and an artifact. And I'm going to hurry this up a little bit because I appreciate we're burning through time. So what do I need to do? Let's see, snippets. Okay, so we're going to change our JavaScript file, our index.js, to incorporate a couple of new things. We're going to add in the artifact and FS, standard JavaScript for writing to the file system. We're going to create the artifact by, first of all, writing that context.json text out to the file system on the runner. And then we're going to build the parameters for the upload artifact. That, when it runs based on our push, will zip and upload the artifact into the UI at GitHub. So I'm going to copy that. And I will go to our index.js. Okay. So you'll notice we've got artifact and FS now in here. So we should probably go and do some installs. So npm install, and it's at actions/artifact for one. And if I do npm install, nope, my bad. Okay. And I just list out my modules to see real quick, make sure we got everything that I think I wanted. FS I can see, ls node modules /actions. Oh, my bad. Yep. Need that. I can see artifact is there as well, so I'm pretty happy with that. So get status. Oh. Should have moved into here. Wow, okay. We'll get there. Love live TV. Okay. There we go, that's much better. Okay, so let's add everything we got there. Add that as that. Okay, I think we have a little bit more work to do before we get that running, but let me just double check on our notes. All right, we did that, we did that. We pushed up our files. Okay, so that step 3 should be good. Maybe it is just an index change in some packages. Let's see how we go. Again, I can push that from here to test. And again, if we go back here and look at our actions runs, you'll see our actions running, triggered by the push to a branch that matches test star. And here we'll see some of that live reload that happened real quick. Okay, so what we can see from our debug here straight away is that the artifact was uploaded, and it was 1,679 bytes, which reassures me that it's not an empty thing that pushed. And we actually see the artifact listed in the build artifact. So super easy to get information written to that file system and then package it up, and you can put this into context. And then obviously download that. It's a zip file. It'll contain the JavaScript, so you probably don't need to see that. You can go and create your own and download that for your leisure as you see fit. Okay. This is also something I said we touch on, which is not strictly part of the JavaScript creation of an action, but more about using Git operations inside of a workflow. I'm probably going to skip the step given time, leave some time for Q&A, and also wanted to show you one last super cool feature in Codespaces. We'll move on to using the REST API that's embedded in that actions/GitHub package. It actually, if you want to see the details, the OctaKit has its own website and community. There are REST versions, there's a .NET Core. The one that we're going to be using obviously is the REST one, and we're going to use it to interact with our issues. So the first thing that we're going to do is we're going to change the events that we're listening for in our workflow. Right now we're listening for pushes, but we want to change that and we want to listen to issues. Quick point of information and note on this, that when you're building actions and workflows that want to interact with issues only trigger workflows when it's done on the default branch. So you can imagine there'd be something of a storm if every branch that had actions workflows on it was triggered with every creation of an issue. So that would not necessarily be a great thing at all. So we're going to change our main.yaml, and we are going to listen to issues. And I'm not going to, bad indentation of mapping file. That's unfortunate. Let's go up here. There we go. I'm not going to bother listening to a push for a branch because I don't actually want to do anything on a push or a pull request or a merge. I'm only interested for the moment in these issues. So that's that particular piece set. The other thing to note is that when we interact with the API, just like we were doing if we were writing a JavaScript application or interacting using curl or something like that, we're going to need to use credentials. We're going to need a personal access token. Out of the gate and by default, GitHub provides us with a default context token that operates in the scope of the repository we're working in. And we can pass that from our workflow into our JavaScript. Before we do that, we have to tell everyone that our action actually expects an input. So we can manage inputs and outputs for actions in the meta file, and that's what we're going to do here. We're going to change our action.yaml to describe this new token that we're expecting here. So action.yaml, I'm going to paste that straight over the top. You can see it's required. I'm specifying access token here. That's something to note because we will need to match that actually in our index.js. And when we pass our token here. So this with section, which will become slightly clearer in a second, is the bit that says at this point in the workflow, take what you have as the GitHub token in my context and pass it as an access token to my JavaScript. Oh, my bad. Okay. So workflow, go back to main. So you can see here, we've got our parameter with, and then we're going to say access token. So that has to match what we're providing in the JavaScript. And it's going to have a value of, we said, GitHub token. All right. And at this point, we should be good. Oh, in fact, I might not even need that. Let me go back and check. Just with access token, GitHub token. Don't need it required. Get them mixed up. Awesome. So we're all set. So our workflow is going to pass a token. We'll save that. Our action now describes the fact that we're expecting an access token, which is good. And our index is going to use that GitHub token once we've written that code to interact with the API. So last piece is to go get it. Okay, so here you can see, if I just grab all of this, you'll see we're interacting with the API using the OctaKit API to create a comment on an issue. We're identifying that issue from the context Remember, we wrote that into the logs. So we're able to get to all of the parameters that we need to identify the issue we want to interact with, and then we're writing a new body back. So I can grab that, paste that into index, save, and then we're going to go accelerate into yep. Let's do, yeah, let's push it to test first. Okay. Okay, so we'll push that up to test and then we'll merge it into master. We'll perhaps do that through the UI. Old school. Okay, code. I can switch to my branch. All right, compare and pull request. Okay. Marsh, do we want to start fielding any questions that are coming up?
There has been no questions, unfortunately. Good sir.
Maybe it's is everybody finding it useful? I'm coding blind, not seeing the chat, so I'm hoping everybody is finding.
Yeah, no worries. Yeah, no. AJ and I have been interacting, and
okay.
I actually am going to duck out now, good sir.
Okay.
You are in the capable hands of AJ, who is
Thanks,
here
AJ.
behind the scenes. But
right.
I have to run to another call.
No problemo, sir. Thank you for your assistance. Appreciate it.
Thanks, Moose.
Thank you, Moose.
Awesome. Thank you. Oh, great. 5-man down. We are developers. We don't talk much. So, Ian, I mean, if you have questions for the crowd, or you know, if it was useful.
Yeah, I'm curious as to, you know, this. I hope that this would be a great kind of showcase for seeing Codespaces in action, because it blew my mind when I started working with it. And you know, if it's useful seeing how we actually go about building actions for the community. So yeah, definitely would like to hear people's comments as we sign off. Uh-oh. No event trigger defined and on. Looks like we made a mistake somewhere. Yep, we missed that. AJ, what's going on in that chat?
Just Hyperchain Labs saying that yes, everything has been very useful, and they're following the channel. So thank you very much, Hyperchain Labs, for that. Also, poor Matthew Isabel wants you to notice him because he's still hanging on with us too and helping out. So shout out to you, Matthew Isabel.
Shout out, Matthew, definitely. All right, I think I would like this one to just get us to a point where we interact with an issue. For anybody that wants to code along with that again and explore the dad jokes at the end, feel free. AJ, what's the protocol for running over a little bit here, or just continuing till we end, or what do we do to thank people for the time and close it?
No, if you want to close things out, you can just close things out. It's all good. Everyone, just a quick reminder that if you do want to follow along and kind of do this at your own pace, the bottom panel in the channel has a link to this specific repo and all the resources that you need. And also, if you, like I said in the chat, if you do have problems and that you're working on in your own work and want us to address them, perhaps in a future stream, also let us know, please.
Yep, I'm going to try and finish off the integration with an issue, so I'm going to stick around for just a little second longer.
Well, 5-man down has a comment. I haven't seen Codespaces, but I did deploy my first action today that updates the README file of my GitHub page with the blogs from my site's RSS feed. Pretty sweet.
Very sweet. Great use case. Love it. Love it. That's another thing. It's saying that's a huge opportunity to go and contribute these actions. Maybe we break out of this because people can, like I say, can follow along at any time and go to Marketplace. Just quick for that. You can take the action that you build through this mechanism, JavaScript or otherwise, and you can go ahead and publish it into the Actions Marketplace. There are instructions on how to do that at the bottom of the post again. And you could see your update my README for my homepage action published right here on GitHub Marketplace. So any other great ideas, share it with the community. That's what we're about. It's been somewhat scary and a lot of fun to share this last hour with you folks. I wish you all the best for the weekend. And with that, I am going to sign off and take a breather.